Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 4th, 2012 meeting of the Currituck County Board of Commissioners. First up, we'd like to have the invocation Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Randy Blanchard from Mount Pillmore Methodist Church, if you'd come forward and give us the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'd stand. Thank you.
Let us pray. Father, we have more things than we have words to acknowledge. For all that you have done for us, all that you are doing for us, and all that you will continue to do for us. We thank you for this great county that we live in and for this state and this country that you have blessed with so many resources and so many wonderful people to give us leadership and guidance. We ask now that your blessings be upon this, our county commissioners, that they may make wise decisions for us, and that all that they might do might be in your eyes that which is pleasing. For this we pray in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Thank you. Next, approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next is public comment period. This is an opportunity for any citizen in Currituck County who would like to address the Board of Commissioners about any matter to come forward. We normally ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and this should be for items that are not on the agenda. The only person I have signed up tonight is Mr. Don Williams. If you come up and give us your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Williams.
My name is Don Williams. I live at 307 North Currituck Road. I'm here tonight giving an update on the shingle landing, Phase 2, or actually Phase 1. I had a meeting with the homeowners about a week or 10 days ago, about a 2-hour and 45-minute meeting. Listened to what they had to say, understand their feelings, and I told them what I was able to do moving forward. I think we got a lot accomplished. Again, it comes back to communication, and I don't think we had a whole lot of that early on. What we've done so far is the new stop signs are up. About 95% of the sidewalks are done. And when you're removing sidewalks, it's not like a surgical procedure. It's sometimes you chip other things, and we've had a couple of people that said, can I replace this, replace that, and it's something we're going back and doing. The ditches, or the roadside ditches going in and out, we've contracted with the contractor. Hopefully, weather permitting, that will happen towards the end of this week. He definitely informed me that he's not going to go in there just to be in there. He's got to be productive, and I agree with that. He needs to go in there first to do his work because it's large equipment. And once he's done, then the person coming in there repairing the actual roads will begin. Again, 30-day process maybe if we have great weather. I don't anticipate great weather. So the work is going to get done. It's going to be in a timely manner. It's in my best interest to get it done. So a couple of things have come up, and I have one partner now who's 50% owner in CTX, and that's Jerry Old. Him and I have come to an agreement that I'll purchase his 50% and within a 6-month period. And also I've become the new president of CTX, which means I'm in charge of everything moving forward. In other words, I have all the say-so. So it's my intention moving forward to get everything done. But I also need cooperation from the board and the community as well. So I have a commitment letter from the bank, which means the funds are available to move forward with everything that needs to be done. Right now it's out of pocket. So the commitment letter is approved upon preliminary plat approval. So that's what I'm asking for, is making a request June 18th to move forward with this project and getting preliminary plat approval. In doing so, I'm not asking for final plat. I'm asking for something from the community as I move forward that I feel comfortable with. Again, funding is everything. I don't know if anybody's been to a bank lately, but it's hard to get money. And I have a bank that's willing to give me the money to do the work. I'm on the site, almost every day. I've talked to everybody. I'm available. So, two things mainly is communication and accountability. I don't mind communicating, and I am accountable. So, at this particular time, that's what I would ask for, just for a vote of approval June 18th so I can move forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Williams while he's up there?
Mr. Chairman, I have a legal question. Mr. McCree, we voted originally to continue this for 60 days. This is shorter than the 60-day window. Is this something that we can do?
Yes, I think if you were inclined to have it come back before you prior to the 60 days in the last motion, you could make a motion that would, in essence, modify the original motion by, for example, stating that you move to have this matter placed on the June 18th agenda.
Was Mr. Chairman, was the motion for 60 days? My recollection is 60 days or until the work was done. If it was shorter than 60 days, then we could move it forward. Is that? Mr. Martin, I believe you made the motion, I think, didn't you? Or
Your minutes actually reflect that it was for a 60-day continuance.
does? Okay.
Yes.
maybe that was just discussion. Okay.
I need to ask a question, Mr. Williams.
Go ahead.
Make sure I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
That the bank's commitment to you is predicated on preliminary plat approval being granted.
Yes, I have a copy of that letter with me. So, I've got a lot of copies, a lot of things, but didn't know if it's something I need to present right now. But I have signatures. I have just about everything I need from what I've told you moving forward. So,
My thought would be if we're inclined to act on this, is to make a part of any motion that he provide whatever documentation that support the arguments he's making to the county attorney for review.
Prior to?
Well, if we make action, we make it subject to, and therefore if they're not acceptable, then of course it would not continue.
But he could do it prior to. That way we don't have to go through Mr. McCree looking through all the documents. If he's presented them earlier, then Mr. McCree can tell us, I've looked at them and.
Well, I think that'd be the case. We go ahead and give him the ability to act until such time as we tell him, no, we're not satisfied with the documentation.
I can provide all the documentation tomorrow. I have it all with me. I have one other thing to get signed. Other than that, everything's done. So,
I'd like to make a motion that we take a look at this again on June 18th.
I think probably we need to look at it and include the people in Shingle Landing before we move forward on this. I think that we need to hear from them in some formal way that the work is being done, that they're okay with the finishing the streets later because of construction going on. I would like to hear that before we move on with, with this.
I think,
We have a
Mr.
motion.
Martin, if we second it and put it on the agenda, then it certainly is going to be out there to the folks at Shingle Land, and I'm sure Mr. Williams will be glad to go see them again.
I'll go see everybody. I don't mind visiting with people, let them know what's going on. It's imperative that I get this project moving forward. I understand you have a job to do, and I appreciate that. But also, this is what I do for a living. I've I've been part of the procrastination process. I admit that. I should have moved forward in a quicker manner. I'm taking charge now, moving forward. And what I would say is, preliminary plat approval is one of those things where I can't go in there and build houses. You still have the final say-so with final plat. All that preliminary plat does, it enables me to have a loan in place in order to fulfill the promise of doing the roads and stuff. I'm doing out of pocket now, but I sure would like to get some of that money back because it's part of the loan package.
I'll second Mr. Patrick's motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Second, is there any further discussion? All right, I'll call for question. Then all in favor of granting this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign? Motion
Thank you,
carries.
appreciate it.
We'll revisit this June 18th. Thank you. Next item of business are public hearings, and the first item of public hearings is a presentation on the county's funding of the Currituck County school system. I presume Dr. Dobney is going to address that? or
No,
is
sir, that will be me. I'm just waiting for the slides to show up.
Oh, all right, all right. I just noticed he was here, and I thought he'd probably be
Moral support.
moral support. We can use all of that we can get.
Mr. Chairman, at your last Board of Commissioners meeting, I presented the proposed budget for next year for Currituck County, and this slide was actually in it. If you recall, one of the largest things we do as a county government is fund local education. This slide, when I discussed it, talked about a formula that we've had in place with the Board of Education for, good Lord, I bet 15 plus years. And since then, there's some questions that come up is maybe it would be appropriate to maybe spend a little time and discuss a little bit further what that formula is and how that works. And so tonight, that's what I'm prepared to do. So next slide, please. The formula has been in place. It has two main components. One is it works with a student body count, and it multiplies against a funding level per student. Next slide. So we start off with determining an amount of students. We start with, we get from the Department of Public Instruction, and it generally comes out in January, a number. So for next year, this past January, we got the number from DPI, and you can see it there. We make two adjustments to that number. One is we add to it students, Currituck County students that do not attend Currituck County schools. There are students, their parents are taxpayers in Currituck County, and so, because again, this number is not our ADM from the state, so we add to that students, taxpayers, they don't attend our school. The next number is the reverse of that. We subtract out any students that are not Currituck County, whose parents do not own property in Currituck County and therefore are not property owners to Currituck County. We have some of those kids that come and attend our school, so we actually subtract them out of this figure to come out with an adjusted projected student body, in this case 3.899. The second half of that formula is, this one's a little more simpler. Each year we take last year's funding level, which would be 2.2 or 2,000, a little over $2,000, and we multiply it by a consumer price index. This year it was a 3.2% consumer price index, so it generates the new price per student. Next slide. You multiply those two numbers together, and that gets the amount of appropriation. One of the beauties of this formula that's been in place is we get the DPI figure in January, February, so when the Board of Education sits down as early as February, they already can start getting a sense of what their funding is going to be for the following year and allows them to get a jump on their budgeting process. Now, this number represents the funds we give for the instructional part of school. It's not capital money. It's what goes into the education element. The slide you're looking at here, this is a slide I presented to show this is the Currituck County general operations budget. The amount we give to the schools is in this figure. What I want you to do is kind of look at the shape of the graph. You see that we peaked out in about 2006, 2007. We had a peak there. Then the economy started going down. You see our budget decrease for several years, and now we're starting to see just a slight increase. So for the last 8, 9, 10 years, we've seen a decreasing budget. So I just want to kind of get that back in your mind, the shape of that graph. Next slide. This is, and again, we fund education inside our general fund budget. So while our general fund budget was decreasing or flattening out over this period of time, you can see we were also able to still increase the amount of gross appropriations we were given for the school system. So although our overall budget decreased, the amount we appropriated the school system during that period of time actually increased. And you can see over that time frame, it increased from $6 million up to a $9 million. So it's $3 million over about that 10-year period of time. This is looking at the same figure, but from a different perspective. This is looking at it from a per-student cost, what our contribution was. And you can see, again, our budget through this period of time was decreasing or flat, but we were able to still incorporate into our budget an increase on a per-student basis for the school system. And it gets you see that one towards the end. You see that one little blip, and it was actually last year. We had an anomaly that occurred. We actually had negative inflation last year. So when we ran the formula, it actually had an impact on the price per student. The overall amount still was up, but that was hopefully a rarity. Next slide. you're going to see two lines on this. That's an interesting presentation. The top line actually shows the number of students in the school. This is the people attending, and we're comparing it to the slide I just showed you, which was our appropriation per student. So even as we had this period of time for several years where the student body number was flat, it actually started decreasing at some point in time. You're looking at we still were able to increase our appropriation. So the bottom line is what I'm trying to represent to or explain is while our budget, total budget, was staying flat, we did have the ability and the luxury of actually increasing the level of funding to the school system. Last slide. This slide is representing the reserve, the fund balance reserve held by the Board of Education. They hold money back on their side to help them adjust or address fluctuations that might come up in things that they have to address when they're putting their budget together. You can see while our budget, in the very beginning part of the slide, you can see the Board of Education was able to actually increase the amount of reserves they were holding. And it peaked out in about 2007, 2008. What happened then is when the state budget hit the wall, I only can appreciate the challenges the Board of Education had when the state started doing various different things to the Board of Education, from reverting funds to not funding particularly maybe positions, class sizes, but the Board of Education had to start addressing the various different impacts the state budget was having, because recall now, during this period of time, our level of funding was actually increasing, not decreasing. And you can see in the last couple of years, the Board of Education has actually had to dip into their reserves to help them level off and deal with the impacts the state is pushing down on them. But the last thing I want to point on this slide is, even though they've had to dip into the reserves to help them get through this period, where they are right now is still higher in reserves than it was where they were back in the 2002-2003 year. So I think questions have come up is how that formula works. Hopefully I've answered that, and the fact that over this period of time where we have been cutting back our budgets and holding a tighter rein on the county side, we have been fortunate enough to actually, somewhat modestly, but we have been able to increase our funding at the local Board of Education level. And I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody might have on this.
Any questions, Mr. Scanlon, about the school funding?
The current level that we fund education still keeps us in the top 20 systems throughout the state. Is that correct?
It does, yes.
And that's 15 systems statewide.
115, 117, I think it's 117.
So we're in the top 20.
And in fact, when the formula was initially put together, I think at that time we might have been in the top 10. And so that was part of the beauty of the financial side of it. We were already maintaining a very high level of funding. So by indexing that, we felt like we would preserve and keep us in that top, at least that top 10, 20% of funding for school systems. And I think we've been able to accomplish that.
Any other
Can we
questions?
ask the superintendent a question?
Certainly.
Bill, can you come to the mic?
Sure, and I'm no longer the superintendent. I'm the chairman of the Board of Education.
Well, that means you're supposed to know more. I'm sorry. I was in Raleigh last week, and there has been a bill introduced, a bipartisan bill with Representative Owens, Spear, Collins, and McGee to look at taxing video gaming statewide, in which the state would get a certain portion of it and the counties would get a certain portion. My understanding is that even with this budget being put forth this year, they still do not account for the teachers that are tied up in the stimulus money that came down from Washington 2 years ago, and that was the purpose of trying to bring forth this bill to see if we could see if the state could come up with money to look at those teachers and maintaining those teachers. How many of those teachers do we have?
Within our budget, well, we did not fund any recurring positions, such as a teacher position. We put all that money in non-recurring funds. Getting back to the creativity that Mr. Scanlon talked about, the state each year for years gave us money. Last year they took back $1.1 million. This year they're taking back $1.3 million. It's called discretionary reversion. They give you the money, but then you have to give it back. And so we have to figure out where that money's going to come from. The majority of the discretionary reversion this year was tied up in the education jobs bills. So last year when we balanced the budget, and I mean we balanced the budget, we did not use any of our reserve fund. And we made some, real deep cuts because we had to get a grasp of, these discretionary reversions and all the shortfalls that we were going to face. So to answer your question, we took the jobs bills money and we did not use it for teaching positions. We put it in, non-recurring expenses.
My understanding is there's 5,900 teachers across the state that will be impacted by that loss of funding come December 31st.
Well, that could be, but not in Currituck.
That's good to hear.
And I'm glad to say we were one of the few districts in the state that did not have to let any teachers go. And I think the Board of Education is very proud of that fact.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question, too, while you're here.
Sure.
One of the questions that's been broached to me several times has regarded the pre-K funding. Evidently, there was a shortfall, and Commissioner Etheridge had explained at one time he thought there was some state funding underway to make up that gap. I understand there are only about a dozen and a half students involved in that program currently, but the request was made to perhaps see if we could consider adding them under the student population used for the funding formula that we use for the schools. And I'm trying to understand where that is now, what the status of that is. Has that funding been made up by the state? Have we addressed it, or is that shortfall still there?
That's, I don't know if it's called more than four. My understanding was the state actually this year came back and funded that program. I could be, but
We're still losing $68,000 in that pre-K funding. And that was, the majority of it was for the program over in Knott's Island. But we still had money in our budget, thanks to the funding formula that you came up with a number of years ago to make it through. So we're able to fund that.
Okay. The formula wouldn't fund all of it, but I see where it would help.
I'd like to make a comment. Wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a day and a time where education wasn't funded from gambling? It was funded because it was a priority, and we funded the government in Raleigh from gambling since they're gambling the money away.
Point well taken. It would be nice.
Mr. Chairman, the More For program as well, there was local decisions that was made, not here, but local decisions out of Elizabeth City
That's correct.
that pulled that money.
That's correct.
I worked very hard to try to get money put back into that program, and we did get half of it put back, and thanks to Bill Owens and as well. But we were able to save one teacher anyhow. And I know over there it's very important. I forget how many kids, about 30-some kids, I believe, has been a part of that program. Hear nothing but good things about it, and if there's any kind of way of we can help to increase the state's ability to and willingness to fund that, I certainly would love to be a part of that. So,
Any help you can give us, with the state legislature, they're the ones that, keep cutting our budget and that.
and I have, don't worry.
Oh, I know.
Even this year, I've even made some calls about it. But.
And that's what Teachers as Parents program it's called over there at Knott's Island. Mm-hmm. We started that a number of years ago when I was superintendent.
It's a good program.
So the answer is then that shortfall has been met through other resources in the system?
Yeah, we found the money in our budget because like I said, we worked very hard on our budget. We found a total of about $430,000 just through transportation efficiencies and energy savings, within our budget. Plus, we cut our central office budget 22% and saved another $220,000.
Well, I noticed too that your reserve percentage looks like it's running right now about 30% or about a third actually of the total budget for that. Is that comparable to other systems?
I don't know other Board of Education. My gut will tell me that might be slightly high.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in the county, and I will say it's because of the funding formula that you guys.
I say, but they are. I mean, it is high, but I also am looking at a trend that I think it's probably wise that you balance your budget without dipping into it, because I mean, you
Right.
see over the last couple of years, it is a trend to bring that down. So at some point in time, probably this year when they did their budget, is trying to bring some stability to it. But I would commend, while Dr. Dobney's here, as a superintendent and as the chairman, when this board and boards before y'all put this formula together and made the commitment to stand by the formula, not only did it greatly enhance the relationship between the two boards, but it's something that when we have an opportunity to go elsewhere and explain to people what we have, it certainly is envious. There's when the state budget went south several years ago, there's more than a handful of counties and boards of education across the state that are actually locked in lawsuits suing each other, which the community never wins when that occurs, over inadequate funding level. And when we can go out and tell other systems, counties as well as school systems, that in February the Board of Education already knows their funding level, and there's not a bunch of acrimony and fighting, and we don't have, which we had in our past, we've had. The funding formula, I think, has served both boards well and has actually done a tremendous job of not only adequately funding education, but strengthening the relationship between the two boards, and I think both boards are to be commended for that.
I would agree.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Dr. Dobney one question? Are you finding the state sending down mandates but not funding them for different actions in education?
Well, the biggest unfunded mandate's that discretionary reversion, where they're actually taking the money back. They're saying, here you have it, but now you have to give it back. Whereas, the funding formula that you provide us with is complete discretion. We know how much money we're going to get. It's a great planning tool. As Mr. Scanlon mentioned, we're the envy of many counties because we know in February how much money we can count on, and we don't have to go and haggle with the Board of Commissioners for every penny. And it's been one of the best ideas. I don't know who came up with it, but I inherited it. I was superintendent 15 years ago, so it was in place then. So.
Well, just for
were you on the board?
since we're reminiscing, I was on the board when we did it.
I thought you were.
And I can tell you the meetings between the school board and the Board of Commissioners for budgets was not fun. And Commissioner Etheridge was on the board when we adopted this, and I have to tell you, over the number of years, what was it, 95 when we did it? Was it 95, 96?
96.
Anyways, it is. We even wave at each other when we see each other in public now. So it's really been a great tool for the school board and the Board of Commissioners to fund our school, that we do our part. We can't help the state and the feds, but Currituck County has always been very good to education over the years, and it's worked very well.
Yeah. To go back and finish answering Mr. Martin's question, we're not receiving a lot of unfunded mandates, not as many as we used to. So
I know that's why fund balance is good to have, and of course, if you're going to give back $1.5 million, that's a cut out of that.
Piggyback
2 years in a row. Last year was 1.1 million. This year's 1.3 million.
Piggyback on what Commissioner O'Neill said, I remember us being told the night that we adopted it that we were naive, that the formula would never work, and we would be back to the
I remember that.
method of how it was done. We still here kicking.
Boy, like I said, we're the envy of many counties because of that funding formula.
Sometimes change is good.
Hope and change.
Thank you, Dr. Dobney.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is a public hearing, so you public out there are able to speak if you have any comments or questions.
Haven't started the public hearing yet.
Thank you.
Next item.
Is there anything else related to that?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we need to open a public hearing then, Mr.?
Well, the next item is
Next
a
item
public
is-
hearing. You are required to have a public
Yeah,
hearing
that's
on
presentation, I'm sorry, okay. I was looking, it's under public hearing, so, getting ahead of myself. Okay, public hearing and action on Currituck County fiscal year 2012-13 budgets, item B. Mr. Scanlon.
Well, at your last commissioners meeting, I presented the proposed budget for next year. Statutes do require that we have a public hearing on that budget, and so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the board might have, and or the public, but we need to have a public hearing. And after the public hearing, you are free to either adopt the budget or we can adopt it at a future date. You just have to take action on it before July 1st.
Any questions, discussion?
There's a couple of items on here that has been added to the budget.
Yes, sir. You have a worksheet in front of you from when we had our budget work session on that Friday. We provided you an email. There's a couple items that were added to the budget that you saw on that Friday, and they're listed out in front of you.
Does anybody have any questions on that, or have you reviewed it yet? Ms. Gilbert?
No, I was just going to make a motion.
Oh,
I'll wait.
okay. Does the public have any comment on that, at this public hearing? Ms. Tam?
Yeah. Tony Tan, 328 Mason Lane. I did attend your work session. I'm not privy to the additional information. Could you read those items for the public or give us a copy?
Mrs. Scanlon, would you review those for the public?
I will read them and give you a copy.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Thank you.
Since the budget was presented to the board at a Friday work session 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Register of Deeds has asked for some additional funding for a conference that's coming up. We were able to modify her budget without actually having an increase in the overall budget. The sheriff came back. They had a chance to go back and review their vehicle replacement program, and unfortunately she was short on how many vehicles she had asked to be replaced, and she asked for an additional 13 vehicles. So you see the funding to add those back into her budget. And the last one was in support of a construction project that's going on in the middle of the county. The water line is on the opposite side of the road of the project, and it's generally been this board's position that the county would incur the cost of having the infrastructure move from one side of the road right away to the other side of the road to the right of way. And so you're seeing the funds there to move the water line to that side of the road. The private property owner will be responsible for picking the line up from there to bring it onto their property, but you see the adjustments there. The rest of what you see there is actually money being moved to support those 3 requests. So the only request you're seeing is those 3 items.
You forgot about the wild horse one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the Wild Horse, the Crawler Wild Horse Fund, Inc. Last year, of the last several years, we provided them $75,000 in funding, and we held their lease for the building they were on. So we provided the rent to the property owner. Next year, we're actually combining those 2 numbers into a single number, and the Wild Horse Fund, will be responsible for their own lease from here forward. So we're actually we had 2 different amounts that we funded. We've combined them together, and actually now that whole amount would be provided to the Crawler Wild Horse Fund, and they'll be responsible for their own lease payments moving to the future. Right. So excuse me, there is 4 changes.
Any questions by anybody?
I just have a comment. One item I see we do not have here, and we talked about it in budget session, is again, an enhanced EMS system in the 4-wheel drive area. For all the same reasons that I give in the budget process, I still feel strongly that those folks deserve a quality EMS service as much as anyone else in this county. And after talking with Mr. Scanlon, I will continue to talk with him and Chief Glover and Chief Van and see how we can bring this thing down to where it's manageable, to where we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. If there's a will, there's a way. I've seen some costs in there that I truly do not believe are inherent costs that can be saved, and I certainly will continue to work with them on that, and Mr. Scanlon has assured me if we can get it to a point to where we can come to consensus agreement here, that we can work that in sometime during the year if we can get to that point. So with that being said, I will not hinder the budget approval process because of that.
Okay, and I support that point, by the way, too. So So if you can work that out.
Well, I think most all of us do, as we talked about it in the budget process. The devil's in the details, and where can we find the money to be able to do it? And there's a lot of occupancy tax there. I see some occupancy tax expenditures that may be, in my point of view, from my profession of what I have done in the past, is more important to me than it may be to some of the other things that we have here. But anyhow, with that being said, I certainly do not mind working with the manager and Chief Glover and Chief Ann, and we will continue this process. As long as I have a commitment from those folks to continue the process, so be it. I'll keep working it.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
If I could just clarify, in the budget that's presented, there is funding to provide coverage in the four-wheel drive area through Labor Day. As I said, Commissioner Idlett, you received a week or two an option A and an option B from the Chief of EMS. He put some numbers together. Commissioner Idlett and I have talked. Some of the numbers could arguably be high. And he has asked for the chief, myself, and Bill Van and him to sit down and review that to see if we can't lower that number and bring it in range, which can be easier to fund. What I told Commissioner Idlett is, as long as we can do that and have it back in front of this board for your consideration prior to Labor Day, you will actually won't have any lapse of in-service. We'll be able to actually continue in service. So that will be the goal that staff will continue to work on through the rest of the summer.
I'll keep working it, yeah.
Okay, any other public comment or question? Yeah, close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I would like to make a motion that we adopt it at our June 18th meeting, only because there are a couple issues, just like Vance was talking about. We've got some other issues that we have discussed, and also we have a closed session on personnel this evening that we need to, that could affect the bottom line on our budget. So I feel that we should consider adopting it at our June 18th meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Discussion? Question?
I'm confused. What closed session has to do with adopting the budget?
Well, we've talked about some land acquisitions and things like that could affect our budget that needs to be further discussion.
We're not discussing any of that at the closed session tonight.
But we have some personnel issues that we're going to be discussing, so.
Not relevant
I feel
to
like
adoption of the budget.
it should be adopted on the June 18th meeting. It's prior to our July 1st deadline.
That may be so, but I would say personnel issues are not relevant to adoption of the budget.
I'll have a point of order. At our work session, I made a motion, and it was duly seconded and adopted that the budget be adopted at the second meeting in June. Now, we would have to rescind that, have a motion to rescind that action, and then adopt the budget or go forward with it.
I
Well,
don't remember that.
The motion that was made was to, in effect, address it at the June 18th meeting, the second meeting in June, which tie in with that. So we essentially need to have that question first.
A new motion by the board to adopt the budget tonight supersedes any motion that was made in the work session.
But we haven't had-
If the board were to make that as a point of order.
I understand that, but we have a question on this one as to whether or not to carry to
You need
the
to
next
vote
one.
on
We
the-
need to
on
vote
the
on this one, and then
standing
we'll
motion.
have another
That's
meeting
correct.
for that.
That's
Any other
correct.
discussion or question on Ms. Gilbert's motion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. No. Now, we're back to the question at hand. Do we have a motion related to that?
You voted, Mr. Chairman?
I voted no.
Okay.
No.
Who else voted? I voted no, you voted no.
Yeah.
Mr. Petrie and Mr. Idlett voted no. And
Mr. Martin?
No.
no.
Okay, so that motion did not carry, so now we are back to the question at hand, discussion on the adoption of the budget. Do I have a motion related to the adoption of the budget?
Make a motion, we adopt the budget tonight.
Second.
All right, any discussion, questions regarding adopting the budget tonight? Hearing none. Mr. Martin, did you want to?
I would only ask, with the discretion of the manager, is there any reason, or do you foresee anything that we need to look at in the budget in the next 2 weeks?
I'm not aware of anything that would require your action next 2 weeks.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries and the budget's adopted. Next item, public hearing and action on 10-year solid waste management plan for the period 2012 to 2022. Make it exciting, Mr. Scanlon.
We're going to talk some trash.
I hate being the straight man for him.
Ben?
Start talking trash.
The general statutes require each county to have a 10-year solid waste management plan, and every 3 years you've got to go in and update that plan. So what you have tonight is an update of the 3-year, a 3-year update of a 10-year plan. So with that, next slide, please. Our goal in the plan is actually to reduce our overall capacity of material going into the landfill by 30%, or to 0.7 tons per capita. We're going to do that by providing everybody an opportunity and access to a disposal facility to do it in an efficient and cost-effective manner, to establish the goal of 30% reduction, and to target inappropriate waste that could be going into the landfill, and to protect public health and the environment. So far, our plan has actually been rather successful. When the General Assembly first put this out in front of us, Currituck County was 63rd out of 100 counties with our effort to reduce our waste stream. Then we made a big jump up to 16th, and if you saw the press release that went out, I believe last week, we have now progressed up to where we're the 12th ranked in reducing the stream of trash that goes into our landfill. Here's probably one of the biggest charts. It's showing you historic information, our population, and what it has cost per ton to dispose of waste. You will see that for a couple years, that cost actually increased, and then the state came out with a smorgasbord of material that could no longer go into landfills, and Currituck County has adopted not only that, but some additional items that we now remove from our waste stream. And with that, this year here, we were successful in actually starting to move towards our goal, and we actually moved under 1 ton of disposal per capita. And again, our goal is to get down to 0.7. Next slide. Here are some of the items over the last 3 years that now or no longer can go into the landfill, which starts accounting for that decrease you see. Electronics recycling. We started doing a more aggressive recycling at the beach, literally on the beach and the public walkways. It's amazing how much material we're actually collecting from that location, or those locations. Cooking oil, oyster shells, and we have our annual household waste, hazardous waste collection. So the combination of those items has helped us start to reach our goal. Kind of just going to show you some sites real fast. Here is the electronics recycling. On the mainland, that location is a Barco. Anybody on the mainland that has electronic equipment, they can take it to Barco and we will dispose of it safely. Knott's Island, we can collect the material there at the house, and on the Outer Banks, we would take it at the satellite office. Here's the signage and the facilities we put out. Each public access in the summer has a recycling center that goes on it. Next, here is the household grease oil, vegetable oil, grease, cooking oil, now is recyclable. Oyster shells now cannot go in the landfill. So we have got barrels out. And the neat thing about this is we actually have a partnership formed with the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. They actually come and collect the oyster shells, and they use it as part of their Save the Bay programs. And this is a shot of once a year. We have the household hazardous waste collection that we set up over at the Judicial Center. And we're going to continue in this plan for the next 3 years. We're going to continue our efforts to look aggressively at items that can be removed from the stream and not end up in the landfill, be aggressive in developing educational programs, continue to promote the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, and recycle, apply for grants and funds whenever we can and when they're available, and to continue our annual commitment to the household hazardous waste disposal. That is our plan for the next 3 years. It does require that we have a public hearing on the plan, and after that, if the board's comfortable tonight, we can adopt. There's a resolution that's required to be adopted supporting the plan. If you're not comfortable, we could bring that back to you in a future meeting. But the plan itself is some 50-some pages. What you saw is a highlight that covers the basics of what's in the plan. But again, we are targeting trying to reduce how much material goes into our landfill and put them in a recycling stream. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Scanlon? I'm certainly glad we're on top of trash. This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. If anybody here would like to comment or ask questions regarding the 10-year trash program as revisited every 3 years. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Move for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
I'm just glad to see, one comment, I'm just glad to see 3 R's other than what it was when I was growing up. Reading, writing, and road to Norfolk. Now
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a lot of cycles involved in that. There's recycling, of course, then there's upcycling, where they're actually taking this stuff and making new stuff out of it that's better. And then there's an organization called FreeCycle, where if you've got household items that you normally discard, you can get them to the FreeCycle website and offer it for free to somebody, and they'll come pick it up. So there are a lot of things you can do with stuff other than put it in a landfill. But the best is probably don't buy stuff that's got a lot of trashy packaging on it anyway. Okay, next, new business. Moving on for board appointments, appointment to the Senior Citizen Advisory Board. Mr. O'Neill.
Chairman, I'm going to move we appoint Joanne DeBello. Is that how you pronounce it?
It is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ms.
Now,
Keene?
let me ask one thing. Miss Andrews resigned?
She was moving.
She's moving?
Yeah.
Okay, because she did a great job. I just wanted to confirm.
And Ms. Keene, you'll send a thank you letter and an advisory letter to her. Okay, item number 2, discussion on policy for Board of Adjustment appointments. We have talked about that previously in sessions, but Mr. McCree, if you'll give us a summary and
Well, as I provided you in an email, I believe it was last week, the issue has to do with the concern that an alternate Board of Adjustment member might serve their entire appointment career or longer as an alternate and never move to the five regular member Board of Adjustment. One idea that has been proposed and was set forth in my email to you has also been presented to the Board of Adjustment, and they seem inclined to recommend the same type of policy, would be to amend the Unified Development Ordinance to provide that an alternate member would move from that alternate position to a vacant regular member seat when the regular member seat becomes available, and that then the vacant alternate seat would be filled by appointment of the Board of Commissioners. And that way, an alternate would have the ability to progress to a regular member seat and not potentially spend their entire appointment time as an alternate member only. The other key thing here is because the Board of Adjustment must have 4/5 of its membership to be able to make a decision. So if you have a 5-member board, it takes, of course, 4 out of 5 members to be able to make a decision on any issue that comes before the Board of Adjustment. If you were to raise the board up to a 7-member board, that would then necessitate 6 members in order for that board to be able to take any action. And so by changing the policy and then changing the UDO to allow for an alternate member to progress to a regular seat, that would also enable us to keep a 4/5 majority or 4 out of 5 member majority on that board, as opposed to having to be concerned about even more people attending a meeting each occasion that the Board of Adjustment sits. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. We currently have an opening now that an alternate can move into?
That is my understanding, yes.
So I guess the person that rotates off, then the alternate would go on,
Would
and the
fill-
new appointment would be by consensus of the board, or would it be from?
It could be in such a way that the Board of Commissioners as a whole, of course, would make the appointment of the vacant alternate position at that point, and also confirm that person as they moved into the regular member
Okay.
seat.
It would have to be the senior alternate.
Yes, everything
Yes,
would be
I
done
think
by
that
Tom.
would be the intent. The other good thing about that is it would allow a new person to come on as an alternate and be able to spend some time learning the process and the role of the Board of Adjustment.
Well, it would still allow for each commissioner to have one appointment.
Right.
And the only difference would be is when one person leaves, an alternate moves to that slot, and then that commissioner would appoint someone, and that person would become an alternate for a period of time, and then the senior alternate would move up at the next slot. I mean, it's simple to figure out.
But,
Yeah.
but if the board is inclined to go along those lines, then the staff would look for direction from the board to initiate a UDO text amendment to that effect.
we'll have it listed for discussion not as an action item tonight.
I got a question I'd like to ask the attorney. What if all seven, or if we go with the seven as it is right now, are appointed as alternates? And it be whoever shows up at the meeting that night, first come, they are the regular members sitting that night. Then you intermingle everybody in and out.
Right, the statute requires that there be a board consisting of at a minimum of 5 regular members, and then any number of alternate positions as the Board of Commissioners might determine through its ordinance. So I do not believe that you would have the ability to make all these seats so-called alternate seats.
Make them all regular members, and whoever shows up.
Then you got to
First.
have too many minimum.
5.
You got to have 6.
But then
No,
you
the
gotta
statute doesn't say just 5. It says up to at least 5.
Is it-
I'm
At least-
saying if you have
at least
7
5,
regular
but
members,
if-
though, you got to have 6 show up.
That would be correct. If you made all 7 regular members, it would be necessary, as the chairman said, that 6 show up in order for the board to be able to take any action.
All right, I'm just asking, trying to see how we could accommodate people.
Mr. Ives.
Chairman, I think, Mr. Palmer, you're on the Board of Adjustments, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you come up just a second, please?
Yes, sir.
What your experience of being on the Board of Adjustments, how many times does an alternate actually sit in on a meeting?
It's been fairly often.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, could, I know it's not for action, but could we, by your fiat, instruct staff to bring back the change to the ordinance
Yeah.
to allow us to vote on it?
Hearing no objection, I'd be willing to make that direction.
I'll second the motion.
Now, is that under option 1?
Yes.
The one
Yeah.
I just went over.
Okay.
From my perspective, I'll second that.
Okay, if we do that and bring it back for an action item.
In doing that, can we do it immediately with that? Where the 2 newest appointments become the alternates, where the 2 alternates fill in, because Butch and I both have alternates that have been on the board that should move up to a senior position.
Yeah, I mean,
As a-
from my
as a-
perspective, I would say that if you get 2 vacancies, those 2 people move up, and that's the way it is. And then the 2 people that replace them is,
Well,
Become an alternate
Yeah.
for the
I think-
learning process.
I think it's important to note that every commission, every appointment, like in my case, every appointment that I make is automatically an alternate.
Right.
Never goes up. So that's the reason I questioned it in the first place.
all right, how can we solve that then? I see, I follow
think
what you're
that's-
saying.
I think that's what
This
Mr.
solves
McCready-
that.
Yeah,
That-
this
that'll
solves.
solve it.
Okay, that does solve it. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
And this solves it, and then
Yeah.
we have one that'll go right in, because so as soon as Ike brings us back, that's what would happen.
Right,
If,
and
if my appointment, his time goes out, his fills that slot, and then mine would be an alternate.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question on, as far as the alternates showing up for the meetings, I mean, they have to show up to count as an alternate. Are they paid for that? Because I've heard that they've been sent home and gotten no kind of compensation for attending it, and I think
I don't know what
it's
that
important for them
practice
to
is.
be
They're
at
paid-
the
they're
meeting
paid.
so
We-
that they
we-
can learn.
We do a roll call, and we pay the members that show up.
Okay, so if the alternates show up
If
to
they're
be
there,
there.
if they're there for the roll call, yeah, they'll be paid.
Okay.
We budget to pay 7 BOA members every meeting for 12
Okay,
months
and
a
that's
year.
that's the point that I needed clarification on, because that's the issue that I've heard.
Just tell them to wait for roll call.
According to the roster we have, there will be 1 appointment coming up in December or January for the board. But I'm looking here, and we've got 3 that's coming up in 2013. So do we need to look at staggering these things so that it's a progression of equal progression?
Okay, but the ones in 13, have they fulfilled their 4-year ability for their
No.
terms, or 2 years?
No, they're all eligible for reappointment.
Well,
Well, they're filling out appointments. That's what it amounts to. They're filling out the appointments. Get the stagger right so it's continuity here.
We can take a look at that.
Thank you.
Would you like me to direct staff to present us a alternative method of staggering the things too, if you do that?
Yes.
And if you'd memorialize the item, first option, and bring it back to us for an action item, we will.
Okay, we'll do that.
We'll act on that.
Yes.
All right. Next item is consent agenda.
Move for
move.
approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is Commissioner's Report, and since we're planning a closed session and then the Tourism Development Authority meeting after that, I would ask that if you have any discussion or comments you can dispose with, do so. But I'll start with Mr. Idley.
I really don't have anything other than I know Jason Weeks is going to be meeting with WRC representatives sometime within the next week or so. I've asked them to take a look as well to include the Knights Island boat ramp again, just to let people at home know. Back in the winter, had them over here. They've done a survey. I've not heard any or had any word from them except one time since then. I'm just kind of curious as to what the status is. I'm also going to take Mr. Weeks either probably Wednesday over to Corova and show him the area in the canal that goes to the boat ramp that's filled in so bad. So anyhow, with that being said,
It should have been dredged.
I was going to ask you a question too about how did the meeting with the Fruitful Beach Property Owners Association go?
oh, you don't want to know.
Okay, that answered my
No,
question.
it did, and that's good. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, we had a very good meeting. There was a lot of good questions that were asked. I done my best to answer them the best I could, and I think most everyone was pretty satisfied. One of the things that I told them is that we were talking about enhanced EMS up there, and that I felt like I had some support on the board, and they were all tickled to death to hear that. So I told them that we'd continue working at it until we get something done. So, but there was a lot of questions. Let's see. They talked about the small area plan. A lot of them didn't understand what was what with that. I didn't get any great detail. I just told them it's something that we're going to talk about at some point in time for planning document for that area. They talked about a lot of good positive comments about Ocean Pearl from a lot of folks. They asked about the ordinance for the wild horse tours. I told them we were still working that, and that was about it. There was just a good. It was a good hour and a half discussion.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you stepping up and covering that in my absence. Thank you. Mr. Petrie.
Two things tonight. First of all, Mr. James Farabee Sr. is under the weather. I would ask everybody to keep him in their thoughts and prayers. And the second thing is, I said it 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again tonight, especially tonight. Mr. Scanlon, you make us look good. You and your staff do a great job, and I appreciate all you do for our county.
Ms. Gilbert.
The only thing I have is I want to thank the citizens from Launch Landing who met with Ben and I and Commissioner Etheridge in between our meetings, and we've got some positive directions going in that development. It's a slow process, but it is happening, so I just want to reach out and let those folks know that I appreciate them meeting with us and bringing some great information, and I especially appreciate Ben and his staff working diligently, because I know I brought a lot of issues up with the developers and the homeowners, so thank you for your staff and all your extra efforts, because I know you don't have to meet at nighttime and things like that, but it is appreciated.
Mr. Martin.
I have a fish story. NC State is doing a study of the striped bass population in the Albemarle, to include, of course, all of us here in Currituck. And 2 weeks ago, while going through CoinJock, stripers started bursting and everything. And since this is about the second time I've been able to fish this spring, I threw and I caught a tag fish. Got the information from the tag, called it in. That 22-inch striped bass was caught and tagged, and a tracking device was put on it in Bachelor's Bay, which is on the Scuppernong River across the Albemarle. It then went up the Roanoke River to Weldon Pond, came back and showed up in Coinjock 2 weeks ago. So it's just a fantastic thing that they do, and they're looking out for the fishery here and throughout the Albemarle region.
Just another point in case that Currituck's a good place to live.
Amen to that. Commissioner, you're right.
Well traveled. Well traveled.
I think after spawning, a lot of people go to Coinjock, that prime rib. And Mr. Etheridge.
It's a party place.
Last Monday, I went over to the Whalehead Club to the Wine and Beer Festival that was held, and it was very well attended. They said Sunday was even bigger than Monday's, and I was encouraged after talking with Ray Meggs and Jen Swikert, the events coordinator, that maybe they have got a plan of action here to go forward and make the Whalehead Club a little more self-sufficient.
And that's encouraging to hear, too. Mr. O'Neill?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to recognize our staff. For the 9th time in the past 10 years, Currituck County has received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This award is given by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. Is for Currituck County's comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2011. Currituck's financial report or audit was judged to meet the high standards of the GFOA. This includes openly communicating all aspects of its financial accounting. Currituck County demonstrates a constructive spirit of full disclosure, according to GFOA spokesperson Stefan Gaither. And I want to, Currituck's got it every year for the past 10 years but one. And I want to recognize our Director of Finance, Sandra Hill, and the department staff, which includes Bridget Brinkley, Wanda Davis, Christy Osmondson, and Kristen Rogers, and of course our county manager. That 9 out of 10 years getting that is not bad.
Very good, very good. Be sure you pass it on to Sandra, too.
She's back there.
She's grinning. She's in the back grinning.
Oh, she's behind the thing. That's why I can't see her.
Put the camera on her with a close-up.
Yeah, good job. Okay, I don't really have anything tonight. Mrs. Scanlon, how about you? Okay, good. A suggestion was made that we recess from the Commissioners' meeting and handle the Tourism Development Authority action first and then go back and go into closed session. So if we do that, we'll have a motion to recess.
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. We're recessed from the General Commissioners meeting, and we will go into the special meeting for the Tourism Development Authority. So I'll open that meeting, call to order, and for public hearing and action on the budget.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, the action from the TDA is the same that you had as the Board of Commissioners. Is at your last meeting I presented the budget, or the proposed budget for next year. You are required to have a public hearing before you adopt it, and we've scheduled that for tonight. And I'll be happy to answer questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions or comments? I think we've all reviewed that. I'll open a public hearing. Does the public have anything to address related to the tourism budget? Hearing none, close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yes. And reconvene as,
All in favor?
yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion to reconvene. Commissioners
So
meeting.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're back in session, Commissioners meeting, and I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Do we need a cite?
You'll want to cite.
Yes.
You'll want to cite the statute that's in your agenda,
Okay.
GS 143-318.11 A6 to discuss personnel.
Okay.
That's what he just said.
All right. We have the motion and the cite. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're in closed session.